Hello, I am back. This is Chris Poulos. Sorry for the confusion. I had to create another stream due to the fact that I had some technical difficulties with the scheduled stream. So hopefully, you'll be able to see the notification. Um, it should be up right about now. The scheduled stream is down. I took it off so that won't be any confusion. Um, so hopefully that we get some traction here. I know this is a new time. Generally, I do it on Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, um, but I had business that I had to shortly attend to on Saturday, so I'm back. I'm back doing it on Sunday, which is honestly a pretty comfortable time for me as well. So I hope you all are enjoying this Sunday. Today, I will be discussing thoughts on nature and what's going on metaphysically and spiritually when people experience nature in all of its glory. And I'm going to be going through different conclusions people come to that can often lead to profound insights and profound changes in life and philosophy from their experience of beauty, especially beauty within nature. Throughout many religions and philosophies, nature often inspires the human spirit to search for something more in different ways. And as a contemplative, I see within nature a beauty as well. But I think it's very important that people begin to look into metaphysics. And what that means is what are the concepts in our minds and hearts that we're being drawn to? And without that conception of metaphysics and spirituality, a lot of strange conclusions can be drawn, and a lot of illogical mistakes can be made in looking at nature. You know, so if you look to the left of me, right here, is a picture of me when I was walking and meditating, and I was thinking about why are people drawn to this? And I was asking for wisdom on this. And I realized that there is a profound beauty greater. You know, in the current modern world, people are really into fantasy and the supernatural and fiction. And I could see that there was some wonder of something beyond there. Um, and a lot of people, when they experience this, they're like, ooh, like, it's so nice. My hectic day job is over. The breeze is blowing, the birds are chirping, the flowers are out. This is just awesome. And they walk along. Um, Good afternoon. Thank you for coming in, John. I could use a little company. I think it's because of the time change and the little hiccup I had with the stream, but I think it's mostly the time change. Um, so, anyway, uh, I was walking through nature and I noticed that I could see why people would want to be one with nature, as they say, or one with the universe, because it was a beautiful, pleasant day and it was very inspiring. And I think a lot of people, when they have a beautiful, pleasant day, when they can go outside and enjoy things, they may have these conclusions. Everyone that drives by me while I'm walking is either drinking or smoking some recreational substance. I can smell it as they drive by because the roads are so narrow. So people are definitely trying to draw something out of nature. But if I turn it on its head, for example, and I said, well, what about if we're going to talk about nature? What about the deep space? Would you want to be one with that nature where you can't breathe? What about like the deep ocean where the pressure is so high you would be crushed instantly, and there's all kinds of critters and creepy crawlers down there, or a volcano, or maybe perhaps just within the nature you're next to there might be some wild bears, right? How about those bears? I wouldn't want to mess with one of those guys. I mean, they're cute until you do the wrong thing, and it's over. And of course, you have diseases and bacteria. So this idea of, well, let's be one with nature is, just if you think of it like that, you notice that people are looking for something beautiful found within nature. But to actually be one with nature is going to have some issues. If you really wanted to do it, you would have to be a survivalist. Correct me if I'm wrong, right, John? You would be like some kind of Bear Grylls guy, and even that, and there's other people too, like the Native Americans. I mean, they were pretty one with nature. They believed in the circle of life and respecting the environment, but it wasn't pretty. It wasn't like this pristine, amazing life where everything's wonderful. I mean, nature has its dangers. Um, so what I was experiencing there was something within nature that was calling to me, but it wasn't nature itself. Perhaps it definitely was the artistic side of nature during the spring slash summer. Um, but and maybe that was bringing to me something higher, but it wasn't exactly like I'm going to live like a Native American or a survivalist. And while I was meditating on this stuff, I realized that there there's like these different angles people come at profound emotional artistic experiences. And these can make or break, whether we're going to have some really smart ideas or some really emotional and seemingly smart ideas, but really dumb ideas. And I was thinking, and it's funny because the SpaceX launch was coming up, and it's funny when I got home like a day later, I saw that that was happening. So it was all coming together, and I actually got the image while I was meditating of the reentry angles. Um, when you have a spacecraft, you have to hit the right angle in order to enter the atmosphere safely and not burn up. If you hit too far in, you burn up, and if you're too shallow, you just glance right off, right? And I saw that as an example of how people's spiritual lives are often working when they have something like this happen. So first you have the glancers or the dabblers, the people driving by enjoying the breeze and a little bit intoxicated. Those are the dabblers, right? They're enjoying the outside, and they're mostly in it to have a relaxing Sunday or weekday or whatever, trying to get their mind off of the pandemic, just for pleasure, basically. Um, and that's most people. Most people are glancers. They just get a little temporary kick out of something and they go off into the yonder. And that's a big problem because in this very consumerist, instant gratification culture, people are very, I would say, they're not doing very well spiritually and psychologically. They're only getting temporary little, highs, and then they go back to the trudgery. They don't understand why they're always feeling broken inside, and because their whole life is just constantly glancing off the atmosphere, they never reach any depth. They just get a little bit of an emotional fix, and they're off, and that's a problem. Um, Now, there's also deep orbiters, okay? People that are orbiting and maybe floating off into deep space. That kind of spirituality is what you would call like Buddhism, right? Buddhism believes that it's almost as if it's beyond just pure atheism. It believes that the universe is an illusion, and a Buddhist would look at the picture here, and he would definitely see the beauty of it, but he would look and say, well, the universe is an illusion, or we're all supposed to become one. So I will negate my desire for that bliss. I will purify myself of a particular sense of ego until I reach the core, which is nirvana. And, um, you know, there's not that many practicing Buddhists anymore, or Jainists, which is Jainism is very similar to Buddhism. But I can say that, that's not quite what I was experiencing, because the problem with the East, those Eastern religions, is they have some great insights of virtue, and they're very stoic, and they understand a lot about human nature. They look at the reality of things, right? But there's the problem that, well, first of all, it doesn't ask the question why. If this is all an illusion, and if this is all something we have to rid ourselves of the ego, why was the universe even like this in the first place? Why aren't we one to begin with? Um, and the desire within the soul, when you're looking at a beautiful piece of nature, is to become one with something. But one with nature, okay, that doesn't really work completely from the reasons I just stated. One with the universe, in the sense that you become one and everything, all is one. Well, we're not drawn to nature because it's one. We're drawn to nature because of its diversity, and because its beauty makes us want an adventure, makes us want something more that's fulfilling, not negating, not something to reject. Okay, so that's the deep orbiters. Okay, then there's not that many of them, but that's another spiritual angle. And it's really annoying, because a lot of the hippies, during the time that they were roiling it up, um, they would often use these ideologies like Buddhism, and say, like, and I'm a Buddhist today or something. But the actual Buddhism is pretty hardcore. And I don't think that's what really people are searching for. Okay. And so that's what they would see in this picture. Then you have people that are below dabblers. You're scanning the atmosphere. You have the well, sorry, below glancers, you have the dabblers. So someone goes out into nature, and they see the trees and the forest, and they like the pretty side of nature, the peaceful side of nature. Okay. And they start to think, well, maybe there's something in nature, there's some power in nature. Like, this is so much better than my crappy, commuting to work, boss yelling at me. It doesn't yell at me, it doesn't judge me, it's just peaceful. It's just, um, it's just there, and it makes me feel a certain way, and I just love it so much. But they don't glance off for a temporary thing. They start to really take it in, and they start to think, I want to bring some of this home and into my own lifestyle. Okay, so they bring like a plant, like I have back there, and they might get into a lot of new agey practices, and they get into crystals and things like that. And what's happening there is, because they're seeing the metaphysical beauty of nature, but they don't understand why. They're thinking like Harry Potter. They're thinking like there's energies that can be utilized to make me feel better, or maybe there's something magical about nature, and I want to live like the Native Americans. I don't know whatever different reasons they have. They think there's something magical about nature, but there isn't. There's something mystical in nature, but nature in and of itself isn't magical, and I will prove it with this discussion here. So let's just say someone looks at a forest and trees, they think trees are magical, okay? But if you really ask yourself why you like that tree, or why you like the forest, you can, if you really use a Socratic method and reflect, you can see that the forest in and of itself, it could be razed to the ground. It could be, it could be burnt to the ground. It could be, there could be poisonous stuff in there that you really don't want to be one with that. But the aspects of peace, the aspects of calm, the aspects of the diversity of its beauty, the artistic balance in this ecosystem, right? That inspires us to imitate that beauty and peace. Okay? So it's inspiring us to imitate something wonderful about nature, but not to completely be one with nature. Not to mention, you know, aren't we also part of nature, like people? And that's a shame that that isn't really brought into question. Program right now that I'm not perfectly, because the world is so broken and selfish, and lacking in interior beauty, that the plants, animals, and trees seem better. I think that's a sad, observation as to why. You hear all these people talk about how they prefer animals over humans, for example. I've heard people that aren't even, into the new age stuff talk about just regular old Joes say, I just prefer to be with the horses and cows, right? And yeah, it's kind of silly to hear someone say that, but it is sad. Like the fact that the virtue is so lost in the people we run into. People are so sucked into themselves that, you know, dogs, horses, and cows, we prefer to be around them. But the horse and the cow themselves don't have anything magical about them. You know, the horse and the cow are just, they're eating their grass, and it's in their nature to be peaceful, and they're not act a certain way. It imitates the behavior of its human owners, and often is trained to act a certain way, right? But what you're really looking at in those things that you prefer other than people are interior virtues. Isn't it an interior virtue to be peaceable with someone else, or to be creative, or selfless, or all these things in nature? They're speaking about virtue. And then, of course, now beauty is a metaphysical concept, but it isn't necessarily virtue. You see, there's external beauty and interior beauty. And external beauty is, of course, what you see here, right? And you can say that there's some overlap, right? Because, like, for example, liturgical colors in the Catholic Church, the sky, like, for example, you look at the sky. The sky is blue, and blue is often associated with hope. And maybe you could say artistically it's associated with hope because after a storm there come blue skies, right? Blue skies means there's no trouble coming your way, right? And you could say that exterior beauty does point to interior beauty. But beauty in and of itself has to do with harmony, and it has to do with some sort of fulfillment, something attractive. And it doesn't have to just be external, it could be interior as well. So when I walk out to nature, hi, Father Chintella, welcome. I see, and I do discursive meditation out there. I'm drawn to what can I take back with me from this artistic, beautiful, peaceful moment. Plus, the sunlight's pretty good for you. It's pretty healthy. Um, and how can I imitate that? And usually the Holy Spirit also gives me the grace to have that. I can't do it on my own. We often forget our own convictions, like New Year's resolutions, and gym resolutions and things like that. So if people understood, and it's very sad because the educational system, in terms of philosophy and theology, and history, and just anything involving how to treat each other as human beings and how to see the universe, is so broken that you have people that have these emotions and they get easily swayed off course. So now you have these crystal people. In my opinion, I think people that are into crystals and energy, they don't have a grounding. They were never given a grounding to see it's not the crystal. Maybe there's something, maybe the beauty of the crystal, the human heart, maybe that it's light of purity. I don't know, is inspiring you to, it's just attractive. But that relates to higher metaphysical truths that don't have much to do with the actual crystal. Um, and you have all these people. For me, it's like I don't need to to think of crystals and trees and stuff as magical, because I already believe in something that's internal and just so it's not, it can't be taken away. I don't have to go around. And you have these people that are into the New Age even today, and they're going around and like, well, this crystal is great for this, and this crystal is great for that, and maybe this the feng shui of this bush over here and this over that, and then to me, I'm just like, if only they knew that they didn't have to spend money and time and energy trying to find their own savior from a created thing. There is already a higher wavelength, a higher spirit, um, that it can be communicated with at any point in time, that embodies these things and is a person. So now I'm going to the lower level. We're going further into the atmosphere. We're reaching the middle way. We're past the orbiters, the Buddhists. We're past the stoners, the glancers, glancing off the atmosphere. The past the dabblers, the New Age people. Oh, hi, John. Looks like you have another. Well, yes. Philippians 4:8. For me, I think that speaks of discursive meditation, right? And it also just speaks of the importance of a balanced life of beauty. You need some good hobbies. You need to try to find, prayerfully find meaning in your work and in your relations with. Yeah, that's exactly. In fact, that's one of the passages. Okay, that orbital angle. And now we're moving into, okay, so, and anyone listening, thoughts and maybe challenge certain concepts of nature that usually are unchallenged. But, this is YouTube here. It's all about discussion. So I'm not saying you're a bad person. It's just I have my own way of looking at things. Um, So next level would be Taoism. Okay, the Taoists, I think, had a bit more of a mature understanding of the nature. Taoism is where we get martial arts from. The Taoist monks, and I do martial arts. I don't do kung fu, but the kung fu monks, like the Shaolin monks, they borrowed their style and their concepts from animals, right? I used to think that it was kind of a joke, and I wasn't really sure. But there is tiger style and crane style and things like that. And Taoist philosophy, most people know about the philosophical Taoism. Taoist philosophy did have some of that New Age stuff where it's like crystals and things. Um, but the idea of Taoism was that there's something called the yin and the yang, right? And there's some harmony in the way nature works that can help us understand how people work. Okay. Um, for example, and it even, again, martial arts, some of these things kind of make sense. Like in martial arts, there's moves that express yin and there's moves that express yang. There's passive moves and there's more aggressive moves, and I think this is along the realm. Taoism kind of gets into both spirituality, psychology, sociology, and just general understanding of nature, and warfare. It's actually kind of this overall philosophy. But the issue with Taoism is that although it has a lot of practical stuff in there, it still leaves out, first of all, a lot of questions about why. You see, when you go into nature here, and when I was discursively meditating, you feel drawn into something greater than yourself. Now, the Taoist monk would say, well, is that we crave even deeper things than just being a more pleasable, artistic person. You know, First, for example, we have science, right? And we have the ingenuity of different scientists. And we find within science that man is really the steward of the world. A lot of people are worried about endangered species, for example, but without people existing, a lot of species would also go extinct. A lot of the good caretakers of nature have saved a lot of animals, species' lives. Plus, the cows aren't going to stop the meteor coming to wipe out the eastern seaboard. It's going to be people. The cows can only munch grass. Um, Science also proved that the universe is much bigger than the Earth. All it takes is looking up what the Hubble Space Telescope finds, and the galaxies and the clusters and superclusters, and you find that the Taoist understanding of, well, use the nature to try to live a better, peaceful life, it doesn't really add up to of the immensity of creation, and that something had to come from something had to create this. Something had to begin the Big Bang and put it into motion. Okay. Um, and it also doesn't really, it has a very loose understanding of the afterlife. It doesn't have much of an understanding of the way of perfection, because once you get down one thing, one virtue, or one part of life you want to appreciate, the human soul wants the next level. And that's, as a contemplative, that is what the great contemplatives of the church, and even what, beginners here, John prays along with us. What you saw, what you thought at first intimacy a year ago, you may want to find something even higher than the first levels you hit, where it's like, oh, I feel so great. I feel pretty high right now, and the Holy Spirit, all the trees, and that's great, and it can inspire you, of course, to be a better person. But at a certain point, something happens where you want to become one with perfection. You want perfection. We call that I call that, well, Saint Teresa of Avila, she calls it, just the wound, right? That leads us to mystical union eventually. Um, Another way to say it is it's a call to deification. It's a call to become one with someone perfect. Um, and the Taoists don't really have that depth of understanding of the afterlife and that call to perfection. And not to mention, once you can discursively meditate on this picture here, and your mind's, and this is what happened to me. My first big meditative awakening was reading the catechism and walking around outside praying rosaries and looking at the sun and the moon. I mean, it's beautiful, right? But once you do this, then you start to think about, well, can I turn my gaze also to people? And can a person embody perfection? Is it possible for someone to be perfectly good and beautiful, not just in the outside, because that's a big problem. Again, we're lacking so much in the interior beauty. We have all these supermodels, and just everyone's obsessed with the flesh. But interiorly, can you meet someone that can you meet someone that has that? Can you have it one day? Hopefully, you know. And often, if you really look at the passions of the heart, someone that just that just admires someone's exterior beauty, they may like that person or thing, but interior beauty is what turns, let's say, just regular attraction to a passion where you want to die for this person, idea, or thing. It's just going beyond, and we have it written into us. We have it written into us to go into a passionate embrace of something more and more and more and more, and you just want more and more. And the problem is, again, people are not being people are not being fed, and it's surfacing in different ways. It's surfacing, you could see people like all these movie sequels. People often don't want unless the movie's really well done, like Casablanca or something. People want a sequel to see what happens to the characters, and they want to keep learning about the characters, and like the Marvel movies. Just one isn't enough. We want to see this character progress and develop till death, until they conquer the final enemy, right? Well, it's the same thing with spirituality. You just want more and more and more. And at a certain point, you have to realize that, even if you're into more of a Taoist kind of wavelength, you start looking and seeing that I want a person. I want to be one with a person that embodies this perfection I'm seeing. Okay. And now you're getting into the middle way. Now you're getting into monotheism. Now you're getting into what the Holy Trinity is all about. The Holy Trinity, and today is the feast of the Holy Trinity. You know, the Holy Trinity, from what I've experienced, and everyone experiences the Holy Trinity in different ways. Through the humanity of Jesus Christ, people have a relationship with Jesus in different prayer walks, through Mary, through different saints, through the charismatic movement. Um, there's all different kinds of ways to experience the Holy Trinity through the Eucharist. Um, uh, but you'll notice that as you reflect on the Holy Trinity, the physical things, but even there's more to him than even that. He embodies perfection in all of its forms. And humans, you'll also notice humans are called to, just because everyone else is crazy right now, humans are called to perfection. Um, and God expects nothing less. He actually, his standards are so high because why? Because the more you are interiorly purified and fulfilled, the happier you will become. True joy comes from that. True joy and peace comes from the Holy Trinity indwelling within us, and cleansing out all darkness. And that's why I think we have people that are just constantly searching in all these other spiritualities, because deep down we all want perfection. Now, unfortunately, there are people that are so lost they don't even know what the heck I'm talking about. Like, they've never, like, our pastor, Father Stan, he was just saying how sad it is that there are these children protesting that have never had a mom and dad there for them. They haven't known a day of peace. Um, all they know is their rap music, and there's no people that are addicted to drugs. A lot of the time, they're people that are so broken that drug is the only thing giving them any peace. That's the only thing giving them anything remotely about message. They are 100% true. If you don't at least aim for it, you can easily be hurt, right? You can you can be misled by deceptive spirits. We believe that all religions believe in deceptive spirits, by the way, but especially the Christians. We believe that, and there used to be this. Welcome, Brennan. There used to be this understanding of the devil, when we have does terrible things and he's scary boogeyman. But there used to be an understanding that the devil as Mephistopheles or Lucifer, right? Yeah, like in the famous stories of Faust and Dante's Inferno. And this idea that that the evil one, the fallen angel, is extremely intelligent and deceptive and smart, and he just needs a little bit of a lie to throw you off course. That is completely gone from our psyche. And it's like, well, how else do bad people get others to do bad things? Like, can you get someone to do something bad by, scaring them into it? Usually not, unless it's a dictatorship and they have a gun to your head. Usually, deception and a lot of these things, um, they have a little bit of a problem in there that can lead to much bigger problems. So this all of these things I'm talking about metaphysically are wonderful, and a lot of the people in the spiritualities, Taoism, the New Age, and they are seeing something good, but in the midst of that, they're missing on seeking the greater goods that eventually don't even become an option anymore. Because what happens is, if you don't have a comprehending of the way of perfection, you're going to eventually get bored. You're going to eventually start doing desperate things to find the next level. You're going to eventually maybe waste a lot of your money, or you run into one of those cult gurus, like the famous cults, Waco, Texas. I mean, that was Christian end times cult, the Davidians, but, the UFO cults and all kinds of stuff that happen. And people can take advantage of your emotions to make money and do other terrible things, Um, Even today, there are cults, and a lot of these cults have these gurus and leaders end up taking advantage of a lot of the women that join for sexual favors. That's a common denominator there. Um, so you don't want to be tied down in these quick fix philosophies. It's better to really study metaphysics and understand, what am I actually being drawn to, and what is the soul actually drawn to. Um, so now you're reaching the middle way. Okay, so you can go into nature, and this is the middle way. Basically, is the walk of a person of prayer. Okay, I go into nature and I see. Oh, and by the way, Brennan, I don't know what your belief system is, but this is heck. I might even make another video that's a sequel to this. Um, but the idea that there is a perfect transcendental being that's omniscient and everywhere, I think that is actually the best description of what happens if someone experiences something spiritual and emotional when they're going out into the woods, right? Um, I also think it's a calling to a new earth. There's going to be a new heaven and new earth, right? Like I said, no one wants to be one with the blizzards and the hurricanes and the black hole in the center of the galaxy. Okay, that's not fun. But they do want to be one with a world that is, infinitely creative and beautiful, and there's all kinds of spirits and I don't know, dwarves and stuff, whatever it is. I think that actually that's the soul yearning for heaven. And that's another thing that's just annoys me. Father Goring laments about this all the time. People don't think about heaven enough. They think it's literally clouds and that's it. And Jesus stands in the cloud and he's like, "Hi, welcome." And I don't, I'm sure the sky will be redeemed and there will be actual heavens. But I mean, just look at how diverse this planet is already, right? And the different kinds of people. Well, you got to check out what the angels, the spirits of God, each one of them is a different species, and the saints, and then there's different degrees of glory. Um, so that's why I'm saying that when people are doing their recreational drugs or getting into the new age, I'm saying that probably is, if they are experiencing something that's kind of like that, that probably is a deceptive spirit, because we believe that those are fallen angels. So they're probably bringing their supernatural intelligence into the person to try to make that person have a religious experience but miss something in the process, you know and and that's the issue here. We have to be like, for example, if someone said, you have to be one, I want to be one with nature. And in order, like, for example, the law of Ahisma in India, which I disagree with, the Ahisma means non-violence. Okay, so this, the founder of the religion of Jainism and the founder of Buddhism, they probably experienced this peace in the universe or whatever. And they thought, well, maybe in order to have more of this peace, I have to be as passive as possible, as passive as possible. And that means I don't eat much, I don't hurt anyone, even if they're hurting me, so on and so forth, etc. Well, okay, I'm all for aiming for peace first. Okay, good old Saint Francis of Assisi was definitely into that kind of stuff. But there is such a thing as just war doctrine. There is such a thing as self-defense. If a child is being hurt, or a woman or some person that's weak is being hurt by an aggressor, and you have the ability to do something, it is not right or beautiful or peaceful to not stop evil from happening. And even those religions, a lot of the people had to adjust some of those beliefs because you had invaders and they would do terrible things. And there's nothing evil about defending your family or your country. Now, of course, turn the other cheek means you seek peace. If it can be avoided, if you can bear the suffering, you know, by all means. But if it's leading you to immorality, or if it has an agenda to kill and hurt other people or to corrupt other people, that's a completely different matter entirely. Okay? So in my opinion, that's a form of spiritual deception. Okay? Either the emotions were there, maybe a lot of good stuff believed in there, maybe there's a lot of good insights, but hey, there's something missing. That's what we call our faith the fullness of the truth. Um, And then there's the other thing where some people just are pure emotion, and they actually think that, if I'm emotionally fulfilled, then great. That's all I really matters. And, again, no one's in this day and age stops people and say, well, okay, if drinking all the time makes you feel great, should you do it? This whole if it makes you feel good, do it thing. I don't know why people don't challenge that anymore. I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me as to why that, if you eat, there's a cheesecake there, should you eat the whole thing? But within the new age stuff, for example, there is that mentality, I think. People come, they're usually very disturbed. They want to find some kind of peace, and they just want to find it now. So they'll get their crystals and they'll get their incense and whatever. But um, there's a danger where you could also, not only could you run into a false mysticism and a false religion, you could also go the other way into magic, where you believe that you can harness energy from the trees and the birds and the bees and whatever whatever else you're harnessing it from. And now you're kind of like a vampire or something. That's like you're now getting into Wiccanism and things like that. Um, and for me, that's very bad because now you're seeking empty power. Power is always empty and unfulfilling. And also, it leads you to do very desperate and evil things to get more power. You're trying to control your own reality. No matter what your intentions are, that is a dangerous line of thinking. Now, I don't know many people that are into witchcraft, and I understand that there are people that are into witchcraft that they don't really want to hurt anyone. And then, I know there's also Reiki people, and which isn't really, they don't think it's witchcraft, but they think they have like energy superpowers that can heal people. Oh, and there's just a whole list of different people into the occult. Okay, so I'm not saying that every single person in there has malevolent intention, consciously at least. The idea that you're going to use the universe and make yourself, and that can lead to great pride and power. Um, Plus, I think it's also unfulfilling. You're still dealing with a level of actual darkness. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like the spiritual equivalent of a guy who becomes a billionaire and he just wants more and more and more and more and more. And the dude's got like six mansions and every possible car and a trophy wife, and like everyone knows who he is, but he still feels like he's empty. He's even emptier than before, right? Um, I think that same can be said of, magical power and, mortal sin and all these things that even maybe more internally powerful than what I just mentioned. But it doesn't last. It's just, you're just seeking some kind of self gratification or exaltation or wisdom and knowledge. There is an ex Satanist, Zachary King, on YouTube. You can find his testimony. and he was going through that. So that's how I know. Thanks to that guy, that's how I know, because he's a lot in a lot worse position. He was in a lot worse position than, let's say, a standard Wicca lady, or some kind of crystal lady. And he's talked about how it was never enough. He was always searching. He was getting more miserable until he found God. He found God, the infinite, right? There's something within us that wants to be actually quite small, and to adore something, and to fall in love with someone. And that even this stuff is not going to do it. You know, um, a lot of these people, just more evidence. You look at a lot of these people's lives, and they had very broken romantic. They didn't have a pretty love life, that's for sure. The people like Aleister Crowley and other people that are into magic, they usually have great brokenness and trouble. Um, a lot of them have drinking problems and things like that. And maybe they don't, but eventually something falls apart. You know, and my question, my challenge to people that are into this is, what if you don't need to seek power, because there is someone that already has all the power. There's someone that already has all the answers and has the fulfillment of your soul. There's someone who cared, not only created you, and not only created all the beauty you see, um, but who died for you and can fulfill you in ways that surpass what the others prescribe, because it's the fullness of that truth. It's 100%. It's not 80%. It's not 40%. It's 50%. We're not throwing out on, a lot of Christians, unfortunately, they throw out the baby Jesus with the bathwater. They get so scared of spirituality that they're actually hindering themselves. And they get like so caught up in the ritual and the law. And I think that's a shame, because one, they are missing out in their own way, and two, they can't reach out to people very well that are caught up in the emotions, and they may not have the spiritual gifts and fruits to really to plant a seed and reach out. But I hope anyone listening, I'm planting that seed and for consideration, or it's making sense, and um, it's also, there's also, when we were kids, before the rat race, you look at kids, for example, and they have an adventurous spirit. They have this wonder in the universe when they look out into the universe. And people, many parents, sadly, can't see what that is. They think it's just for kids. They think it's just kids being kids. That's completely wrong, you know? And then they suffocate their kids with materialism and busybody work, and it's very sad. And they don't see that that child is looking, in all that adventure, they're looking for something beyond this world. And very few people understand that. The Martins did, Therese, the little flower, and her family did. And we need so much more of that. But that's another talk for another time. We talk about the Martins in Utopiana in previous episodes. But really, a lot of the spirituality is coming out. It's really quite a judgment on the failure of Christians to show what people are really searching for. Where are the Saint Patricks? Where are the Elijahs? Where are the great evangelists that have the intellectual and spiritual foundation to really say, hey, there's something greater than the religion you were in before. Um, Even things like, speaking of Saint Patrick, okay, um, even even things like Druidism. Okay, Druidism's a different kind of religion, which is, what the ancient Irish were into, and now people are getting back into it. It's such a shame. Okay, Druidism's even deeper than just Wicca. What that is the Druids believe that there's literal fairies and tree spirits and fauna, kind of like the ancient Greeks. They believe that that there's spirits of different, persuasions, and there's gods lording over nature. Another example would be something we also talk around here. The Amazonian people, the Pachamama, and the shamans out there, right? Okay, and that's what they believe. And you know what? I can understand that, because the fact is that there is a spirit world, and there are millions and billions of spirits for with all different kinds of jobs. But the question isn't if they exist. The question is, what is who is the ultimate? Who is in charge of the universe, and what is the purpose of the universe being like this? Are they just random spirits and beings of power, or is there a purpose to that? Okay. And if it only makes sense that if there's deceptive spirits, bad spirits that try to make people only focus on one aspect and miss out the rest, then there's also good spirits that are even greater than that. So, if I run into someone that believes in that, I would start with the fact that I wouldn't disagree that there's a spirit world, but I would ask them to go deeper and to really talk about their beliefs and their yearnings of their heart and their soul, and the gospel and what Jesus proposes. But no, we don't have that. We have people running around thinking we need to have programs or integrate, the lifestyle of that person to be one with nature into um, Christianity. And it's a shame, because we are supposed to have the fullness of the truth, and no one wants to say it. Uh, but again, another rant for another time, right, Father Chantella? I'm sure you run into all kinds of issues. There's people dabbling in this stuff everywhere. Um, but I hope that this discussion proved to be um, useful for those listening. Um, Pass it on to those that you think might want to listen, and for those that are watching, if you are not Catholic, and please leave comments after the video is uploaded if you didn't make it, and I would be happy to respond charitably to your questions and your criticisms and whatever else you believe in. That's the point. That's what we're supposed to do. Uh, I'm not here to hit you over the head with the Bible. I'm here to try to explain the depth, the mystical depth of of the Catholic Church, and the mystical depth of the contemplative life. So, what is the meat and potatoes behind, you know, the God we believe in? Can he be experienced? Are people seeking for God without knowing it? It's just basics, and very few people actually want to ask those questions. But hopefully, John, and I'm sure Father Chantella, you do the same, and Brennan, and whoever else is listening, um, you can start reflecting on this as well, and maybe we'll get a movement going. Hopefully, um, and lastly, there is an issue when you get too much into seeking powers and seeking some energy or force. Um, there comes a point in time where you start to want it all. I think in the end, everyone must return to the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden um, has great depth to that story that most people don't understand. But the Garden of Eden is basically the question of, how is man to be deified, to become like God, and eventually the dark one, the fallen angel, he says to anyone, really. It doesn't have to be someone who's into magic. It should be someone who's living in life of sin or whatever. He asks, well, if you want it all, then take it. And that's where Satanism comes in. Yes, there are people that start off in regular witchcraft or whatever they're into, and they run into, the fallen one. They run into what they think is the pinnacle of power and success. But Satan is just a fallen angel. He's just like what? I mean, before he fell, he was one of the top ones, but he's nothing compared to God. And now with the Blessed Mother, the Blessed Mother there, the position has not only been filled, but has been, I mean, he's been completely embarrassed by the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother exceeds all the angels and saints combined, okay? Um, and he says, well, this is your destiny. Your destiny is to become God. To become God. In fact, God, sometimes he says, God isn't even real. God is just a projection of the human, uh, the human potential. Isn't that the theme of many horrible, dictatorships? Like Adolf Hitler was into that kind of thinking. Many horrible movements have been started with human potential, human success, human perfection. Do what thou wilt, you will find your enlightenment. Okay. And he uses all these bells and whistles and the beauty of nature and all this stuff and all this depravity, and he makes you think it's all an energy force. That's why you have people in Satanism, eventually they do abortions. They do abortions for that. That's their sacrament. Why? Because they think innocence and purity is just an energy, or it's just, you know, it's just the devil. They consider him. They don't really worship the devil the same way we worship God, but they consider him like kind of like the guide to human enlightenment. And they're like vampires. They seek out, just like a lot of other bad people. There's other kinds of sins that involve that, but eventually that lust for power, it's like I'll do anything to have it. Now, that's the devil, okay? And that's what he tempted Adam and Eve with. That's what the apple was. It wasn't just an apple. It was, I think, what happened in the Garden of Eden was actually something occult happened there. I think that the Adam and Eve were actually very smart. They weren't fallen yet, and the devil's even smarter. And they probably understood. He's saying that we're literally going to become God or something like God. We're going to have incredible mystical power because they were already living very pretty. The Garden of Eden was a supernaturally beautiful place, and they did have, you look at St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine, what he says about Adam and Eve. They were not just healthy people with good suntans. They were, you know, very impressive. So I think they did understand that this was a form of, this was Satanism. It was a kind of rebellion on that level, and that's what we see in there. But there is a correct there is a correct answer to that question. Is God meant to be like God? How close can we be like God? Can we experience God so closely that we can become one? And the answer is found in this lady back here. The Blessed Mother Mary did the exact opposite. In the wisdom that God gave her, she, instead of like the devil grabbing for power, she did the exact opposite. She became so small and so humble, and that was just part of her nature too. I mean, God created her to be this way, but she did say yes she did make a decision. She so totally surrendered to the infinite beauty of her Savior and the infinite goodness that she became a conduit, and she perfectly reflects God. It's the path of humility that leads us close to God and leads us to that unity that we all seek. That's why I recommend the consecration of the Blessed Mother to everyone. That's the answer. That is why she does crush the head of the devil, but I think that has the crush the head of the serpent in the scripture. But I think it has also a metaphysical meaning. I think when I see the Blessed Mother crush the head of the serpent, she's crushing the path of power with the path of humility, with absolute surrender, humility, love, and obedience. That is the path of spousal union. You're not here to grab and take. You're here to reflect. You're here to follow that beauty you saw here in nature or in other things. So that's my final statement. And that's, I hope I didn't make anyone confused with that orbital angle um, analogy there. But I hope that this makes sense, and please, you know, reflect on it, come with your own questions and comments, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this beautiful, peaceful Sunday.